show. Yeah, clash momentarily for class solidarity. Cash circulating, give the masses back its currency. Greed from elites, oligarchs stay fed. Deep state, fake fed, everybody break bread. Racism, homophobia, sexism, religion in this melting pot we live in. Time to build a new system, unionize labor rights. Highlight the issue, talking heads left is best. The saga continues. The Nomiki show. The Nomiki show. The Nomiki show. The Nomiki show. crash momentarily for class solidarity. Cash circulating, give the masses back its currency. Greed from elites, oligarchs stay fed. Deep state, fake fed, everybody break bread. Racism, homophobia, sexism, religion in this melting pot we live in. Time to build a new system, unionize labor rights. Highlight the issue, talking heads left is best. The saga continues. The Nomiki Show. The Nomiki Show. The Nomiki Show. The Nomiki Show. momentarily for class solidarity. Cash circulating, give the masses back its currency. Greed from elites, oligarchs stay fed. Deep state, faith fed, everybody break bread. Racism, homophobia, sexism, religion in this melting pot we live in. Time to build a new system, unionize labor rights. Highlight the issue, talking heads left is best. The saga continues. The Nomiki Show.
Hello, welcome to the Nomiki Show. I am Nomiki Konst, and today I want to know, what is the Biden doctrine? What is Joe Biden's approach to the world? Does he even have an approach? Or is his approach just to slowly and conservatively react to crisis after crisis? You know, the crises that he's inherited, the crises that have exacerbated in the last few months since the Trump administration ended. This is a big question as the Biden administration fumbles its way through the two biggest foreign policy challenges in the world right now. The pandemic that will not end, and the new Israeli government incited attacks against Palestinians. It's been a few years, and it is 8 days so far of extraordinary escalations with dozens of lives lost across the board. But let's be clear, this isn't just about politics. Lives are being lost every moment in both the pandemic and with the Israeli attacks. The United States is singularly positioned to lead the way out of both of these horrors, singularly positioned to save lives and to put the world on a better path. We have the power, the wealth, and the standing with key players to make a crucial difference right now. So where is Biden's courage in these moments? Can you see it? Because I can't. Instead, he's waffling. You can feel him trying to navigate to please constituencies, to please donors, corporate interests, and foreign interests, to a world that desperately needs vaccines. He sends a handful of doses that we have a vast surplus, but seem nervous to share. To an Israel that can't afford to lose American support, he makes a limp call for a ceasefire while sending Israel more military aid, as if the billions we send every year haven't been enough. They're the largest recipient of military aid from the U.S. Congratulations. As you file your taxes this week, know that you have helped bomb a school of Palestinian children and two offices, headquarters for the Associated Press and Al Jazeera News. The question I am asking right now isn't about the pandemic or about justice and peace in the Middle East. We need to talk about both, and we have to, right? But my question today is, where the hell is Joe Biden? He was elected on a promise to lead courageously in a moment of compounding crises exacerbated and created by Donald Trump. He ran to fix this. Yet, it's a lot more. It's a lot at once. I get it. But this is a man who's been preparing for this supposedly his entire life. He ran on a promise to bring America back into the community of nations, on a promise to replace Trump's neo-isolationism and America first crap with an America that respects other countries and works with them to solve global problems. Instead, he just seems to lurch from crises to crisis. Where is Joe Biden's courage in these moments? My God, you were in the Senate, President Biden, since you were 30 years old. You'd think that you'd have an understanding of how power moves and how you have to seize a moment to deal with crises. If there's one thing that Joe Biden should have courage around, it actually is foreign policy. He courageously challenged Hillary Clinton when she was Secretary of State on her foreign policy. The Obama strategy around Iraq, he lost that fight, but he at least challenged it. So we need that Joe Biden, the one who has some sort of core, some spine, now more than ever. So the Biden doctrine to me, well, he is inheriting all of these crises in which he will be forced to take positions he was not built to take, that he was possibly part of creating. Meaning the neoliberal positioning on many of these issues is no longer the solution. Neoliberal waffling while taking the money. You can't please the donors and the interests that got us here to these crises and then simultaneously solve them. He is going to have to take positions that go against his DNA. Except he's just sitting there. He's just dipping his toes in. letting difficult situations turn into bigger crises, when the red flags have been there all along because of greed, because of how we operate, trying to maximize profit and power instead of just the world. Why does he have to wait so long for so many things to become a crisis? Why can't neoliberals read the room, see which way the wind is blowing? And I hate to speak about this in such flippant ways, but that's how they're seeing the world. Instead of seeing the lives that are lost, the way that progressives have been challenging them to work from a human-first approach and not a profit-first approach, they've jumped the shark. This is even true about the pandemic, and it's definitely true about the nightmare right now with Israel against Palestinians. What the hell is Biden doing? Not enough in either situation. On the pandemic, Biden could say to America, we have more than enough vaccines. We can share. I mean, really share. Tell the pharmaceutical companies you have more than enough profit. You can share the wealth by helping others make the vaccine, meaning give them the formula, not leave it to some foundation to make the money off of. On Israel, Biden can tell both Netanyahu that the time for pandering to his radical fringe is over. We are no longer supporting your missiles that just hit innocent children and families who have nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. The entire world is calling out Netanyahu right now. And Biden's, maybe you should have a ceasefire. Meanwhile, here's the money to build, to send the weapons. Come on. He can tell Netanyahu, the more powerful player in this painfully pas to just stop. This is not about self-defense. This is about refusing to find a solution because peace is politically riskier for Netanyahu and for the right wing in Israel. This is about annihilating an entire people who are way under-equipped to defend themselves. The one person who has the clout to say enough is enough is Joe Biden. And now is the time. Cut the funding, distribute the vaccines, end the filibuster, be a leader, because these crises will only get worse if they are not addressed with courage. All right, everybody, we have a great show today. We have Napoleon the Legend and Joshua Kahn Russell. But first, Craig Unger is here. He is the author of American Kompromat, How the KGB Cultivated Donald Trump, and Related Tales of Sex, Greed, Power, and Treachery. I don't like to talk about Trump that much, but I'm very, very excited for this conversation. Lots to discuss. All right, we'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to the Nomiki Show. I am very excited about this one. Craig Unger, he is the author of American Kompromat, How the KGB Cultivated Donald Trump, and Related Tales of Sex, Greed, Power, and Treachery. If it didn't have such horrifying impact on our current state of affairs, I would be like, what a great spy novel. But of course, we are dealing with ramifications now. Craig, thank you so much for joining the show. And you're on mute, just so you know. Oh, you're on mute. You know, it's like the pandemic's over, but the muting issue
still is over too. I think. I hope.
No, we will never go back to offices because Elon Musk is going to be funneling all that money to trips to Mars instead. And we're all going to be doing live streams from there. Craig, okay, so tell us about this man, Donald Trump. Who was he?
Well, I mean, to me, one of the most important things is he, in the end, I think one critic called it unassailable. I make a case that he really was a Russian asset. And a lot of people have suggested that. John Brennan, a lot of the very top people in national security who came before Trump have asserted it, but no one has ever said, this is what happened and how it happened. And what I try to do is put together the full first detailed narrative of how he became an asset, first to the KGB and now to Russian intelligence.
Just so can you give us a little bit of a reminder of the timeline here? The KGB, the KGB was ended after the Cold War, but did all the KGB people just, disappear and go to like South America or something the way that
right.
did?
This goes back more than 40 years to 1980 at the very latest, really. Maybe actually it started before then. But the KGB, of course, was a fearsome spy agency for the Soviet Union. And, I think one of the big differences, and I think we're sort of rewriting history, is everyone says, well, terrific, we won the Cold War, hooray, hooray for the West and all that sort of stuff. I have talked to a lot of KGB agents lately, and one of my sources, Yuri Shvets, who told me the whole story. And while the United States may have won the Cold War, in a way, so did the KGB. And it continued even after the demise of the Soviet Union. That's what I think a lot of people don't understand. When you talk to people in our spy agencies, whether they're in the CIA or FBI counterintelligence, and you go back to that period at the end of the Cold War, a lot of them were scratching their heads saying, well, maybe we're all friends now. What do we do? Are these still our enemies? We didn't really know what to do. And we sort of just sloughed off and thought, oh, now they're going to join our great market economy and we'll all be friends. That is not what happened. And what happened is the KGB got billions and billions of dollars from the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, plowed them into commodity firms that started resurrected themselves as actual companies, but they were really still being run by the KGB. And later they came along and bailed out Donald Trump and have done terrific damage. If you look at the oligarchs, the kleptocracy that Putin has created, it all grew out of this. These were the people who all had every single person you can think of as an oligarch, like Oleg Deripaska, is really a function of Russian intelligence today.
So this is so mind-boggling to me. How is it that these were not ideological communists; these were institutional communists? That I mean, without going down the rabbit hole of what happened post Cold War and how the kleptocracy took over Russia, I think for the American left, it's very hard for them to wrestle with this idea that that Putin, it comes out of communist Russia, but fully supported the manifestation of the kleptocracy and is propped up and invested here too. I mean, I live in New York City. I'm fully aware of how many apartments have been bought up by people trying to hide their money in places. Whether it's Russia or China or anywhere else, Singapore. So how does that work? How do you go from communist to like extreme capitalist? And what is the KGB's role in all of that? The former KGB's role in all of that?
Well, one is I think maybe it's helpful to just forget about ideology for a moment and the problems between communism, capitalism, and Marxism and all that. It's about greed. It's about power. It's about money. And one of the central things that's important to understand is that the Russian mafia, unlike the Italian-American mafia we know so well, which was always at war with FBI, the Russian mafia is really just another branch of the KGB, of Russian intelligence in a way, and it operates in concert with them and serves their interests, and they're allowed to do whatever they want. And if it's laundering billions and billions of dollars through Donald Trump real estate, well, then the Russian intelligence figures out a way to use that. And I think it became very, very powerful in creating a very strong relationship with Donald Trump, where in the end, he's done everything Vladimir Putin wants.
Oh, wow, so much there. When the investigations were happening, I was always very curious why they didn't lean into the money that's being laundered. I mean, at least the congressional investigations, the money that's being laundered through real estate, his real estate holdings. And my instinct was, well, it's because, you know, real estate in New York is a Democratic, you know, big Democratic donor base. And maybe some of the developers like Donald Trump or others don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Is that the sense? Because it seems, I don't know how much you can, I mean, if they're paying in cash, I don't know how much it can be documented or not, but.
Well, a lot can be documented in the sense that it's hard to prove each and every case is money laundering, but there are two factors that set off alarm bells. One is if it's a transaction with an anonymous beneficiary, where you don't know who is going to be the beneficial owner, who is buying the real estate. And two is it all cash? If there's no bank involved, then you can essentially put down $10 million here, $10 million there, and just buy up real estate left and right. And you've laundered a huge amount of money in very, very easily. And it's very hard to prove that the buyer, or rather the seller who gets all the money, Donald Trump in many cases, what was in his mind? Did he know he was getting money from illicit transactions? That's hard to prove. I mean, what you can show is that Trump did these kinds of transactions at least 1,300 times.
Woo!
And I would think that's a pattern. That's just
Whoa.
Oops, I did it 3 or 4 times. No, this is a real pattern. This was a way of doing business. And it's really why I think there should have been racketeering charges involved in this.
Was in the investigation. So let's start at the beginning here. I'm a scholar of Wayne Barrett's, who, you know, famously wrote about Trump very early and had a book about Trump. So Trump's father was in real estate, of course, in Queens. Trump got his first real estate deal in Midtown at the Commodore, the old Commodore Hotel, which is now the Grand Hyatt?
The Grand Hyatt, yes.
Which is you know, a gross building. Aesthetically disgusting, I'll just say that. But this used to be, you know, perceived as a much more, you know, unsafe New York, like it was very much like late 70s, early 80s era. Was that when they got him? Like, when was the moment they got him? That was it.
That's what started it off. Absolutely. I mean, it's still the Grand Hyatt Hotel, and you may not like it aesthetically, but financially, it was Trump's first genuine success for him. He made a lot of money off of it. And like every hotel, it needed television sets. And where did he get his television sets? But from a store run by Soviet emigres, that was actually, and I report this for the first time, but it was really a front for the KGB. And
explain that more. Like, how were you able to prove that?
Well, one of my sources, a guy named Yuri Shvets, who was a major in the KGB, and he was with Washington Station, that is the KGB's bureau in Washington. And he was recruiting spies for the Soviet Union back in the 80s, while his colleagues at New York Station were going after Donald Trump. I talked to, in addition, so Yuri was the one who first told me this about the electronics store, but I was able to back it up by talking to a former federal prosecutor. He said he used to camp out there with the FBI watching all the Soviet spies go in to buy their electronic goods at this electronics store. So this was a known quantity within American intelligence. This was known to be the place. The New York Times had stories about it and mentioned all the top Soviet officials who went there. And it was a way of, the co-owner, Semyon Kislin, was known to be what is called a spotter agent. And that is his role within the KGB was to spot people the KGB might recruit and determine or not whether it was worth expending resources on it. So when he went to Donald Trump and said, I'll sell you 200 TVs really cheap, he was in effect opening the door of the KGB. That's how it all started.
Wow. And so Donald Trump was just like, I need some TVs. And it's a good deal.
I'm sorry, Donald Trump
was just like, I need some TVs. This is a great deal. And P.S. in 40 years, we'd like you to run for president.
Right. And they started playing him. When I talked to Yuri about what are you looking for when you look for a spy? And he said, well, Donald Trump was a dream. He was vain, narcissistic. He wasn't very bright. You could plant ideas in his head. And it's very interesting. I started going back through all the old clips and interviewing people about Trump in the 80s, because he was a wild playboy at the time. This is a period when he's just starting to meet Jeffrey Epstein. They had parties with the two of them and 28 girls. I mean, I think that tells you all you need to know about Donald Trump.
Not surprised at all.
Right. But at the same time he was doing that, Trump began to present himself as the world's leading expert on nuclear arms, which was absurd. It was ridiculous.
What?
And you can see these clips. I cite them in my book. He's talking to the Washington Post, the New York Times, and so forth. And that's when the KGB invites him and orchestrates his entire trip to Moscow in 1987. And for the first time, he's taking all these hints from them, and he decides to run for president in 1988. This was the year that George H.W. Bush ends up winning the presidency. But before that, Trump is dipping his toes in the waters. He goes to New Hampshire, where the New Hampshire's primaries are, and then he takes out a full-page ad in the New York Times, Washington Post, and the Boston Globe, and it's full of all these foreign policy talking points that were effectively dictated to him by the KGB. And at the same time, Yuri Shvets, my source, is back at KGB headquarters in Moscow and gets an internal memo celebrating the acquisition of a new asset in the United States who's done his first active measure for the KGB, and they attach this ad that Donald Trump has taken out in the New York Times and the Washington Post.
So, okay, so Yuri Shvets, why is he willing to talk about these things now? What did something happen between him and Putin? I mean, Putin was part of the KGB. We buried the lead here. Putin rose up through the KGB.
Right. Yuri was in the KGB through the 90s, but he quit just before the end of the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union crumbled, he moved to the United States. He had been totally disenchanted with the Soviet system, and he became an ally and partner of Alexander Litvinenko. And with Litvinenko, they dug up some of, Litvinenko and Yuri dug up some of the most damaging material on Vladimir Putin that's ever been published, including reports on how Putin was behind the famous apartment bombings that killed more than 300 Russians and solidified Putin's grasp on power early in his presidency. So, by the way, that was the book that led to Litvinenko's assassination. And Yuri was testified at the inquest and fingered the assassin and all that. So Yuri has been an active force, a vocal force against Putin for quite some time. And I'm surprised that no one else has interviewed him on this, because he's very, very knowledgeable. And I was able to corroborate a considerable amount of what he told me.
Let's talk about Epstein real quick. Because I was under the assumption that Epstein, if there was any sort of spy relation, there was rumors of him being an Israeli spy. Where's the connect? How is Epstein looped into this?
Well, there are a lot of unanswered questions about Jeffrey Epstein, but it's clear he did play a role with Russian intelligence as well. And the way I saw it, his operation, though it's most frequently talked about in terms of sex trafficking, it was also a compromat factory in many regards, because he had hundreds of videotapes of sexual activities. And that may well have been a key part of what he was up to. He was also, I mean, everyone knows he was close with Ghislaine Maxwell. Well, her father, Robert Maxwell, the legendary press baron, he was known as the bouncing Czech. He was from Czechoslovakia originally. So that's C-Z-E-C-H. And he was very close to Russian intelligence. He was close to the KGB. He would close enough that he could just go to the Kremlin and walk into Gorbachev's office unannounced. He also had close relations with Mossad, especially with Ehud Barak. And one of my sources said he saw Jeffrey Epstein with Maxwell at Maxwell's headquarters in the late 80s. Maxwell died rather mysteriously in 1991. The father did. But so some of this was going on before Maxwell became, before Epstein became close to Ghislaine Maxwell. And we saw it going on in later years. Once Epstein got into trouble with the law and the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office was investigating, one of the deputy sheriffs there ended up in Moscow. I tracked him down. His name was John Mark Dugan. And I tracked him down by phone in Moscow. And he told me he had 678 videotapes. He showed me one of them of sexual activities that were videotaped in the Jeffrey Epstein's
Wow. And he was in Moscow. He ended up.
Yes, and in fact, I have a photo of him in Moscow meeting a man named Pavel Borodin, whose name may be unfamiliar to most Americans, but he's an enormously powerful Russian who is one of Putin's mentors, and he's in charge of all of Russian Federation property. That's nearly $1 trillion worth of property. And there he was meeting with Dugan. And when I asked Yuri Shvets what he thought that meant, well, he said the only thing possible could be going on is he's trying to sell his compromat to the Russian Federation.
I know. Can we talk a little bit about Roger Stone in this? Because you know, he famously says that he recruited Donald Trump to run for president, and he tried to get him in the 80s. Like, he likes to take credit for it, but what's his role? And does he have a role?
He's the bad boy of politics he's sort of catnip to reporters. I've interviewed him several times. And in 2012, when Romney was the Republican nominee, I met with Roger during that period, and he kept saying he said, in the long run, you go with Trump. And it's clearly he's been with Trump for some time, going back to the 80s. And if you remember, Donald Trump's first lawyer was the unforgettable eternal Prince of Darkness, Roy Cohn.
Yep.
And that goes back to the late 70s. And Roy Cohn was friendly with both Paul Manafort and Roger Stone. And so you had the triumvirate there of people who were molding the way the Trump playbook, which is never apologize, never backtrack on a lie, and attack, no matter what you're doing. And I think you can see that. And Stone became a key figure. He in all this. He was an intermediary between Julian Assange and Trump and the distribution of the emails. And I mean, we've had reporting on that.
Yeah, there's been a lot of
going
reporting
back and forth. So he's quite a character.
So Trump is out of office now. The Trump legacy, he's haunting the Republican Party. But surely Putin is thinking, well, what's next? Where's the country going? And how am I going to hold, whatever his agenda is, surely, and let's just be fair, because I know the leftists are going to say it. We do the same thing. I want to get it, we do the same thing in other countries. This isn't a unilateral situation, because it's going to happen. But this is modern day geopolitics. And, you see it popping up. You see comedians getting elected in Europe that have the backing of Putin or Putin's allies. Is there a sense of what the plan is now?
Well, I think we're in a very fluid situation, because Trump, now that he's not president, is obviously worth much, much less to Putin. In addition, you have rumors, I don't know if they're true, of Putin having medical issues, of various internal political issues in the Russian Federation now. And of course, you have the ascent of Navalny and his being in jail. So there are a lot of pieces of the puzzle in motion, plus the fact that Donald Trump still has real control over the Republican Party. And we saw that with Liz Cheney and it's like a Stalinist purge. And the Republican Party, to me, reminds me of the Party of Regions in Ukraine, which is essentially a party for Putin puppets. It's just a way for him to manipulate events in another country. And Putin has got that going on still through Trump with the Republican Party. So we're going to see that play out again and again, at least in the midterms next year. And perhaps if Trump is not in jail by then, if Trump decides to run for re-election in 2024.
You don't think he's thinking, okay, so there's a generational shift, undeniable generational shift that's happening. And there's a lot of people who are angry at the Democratic Party who are under the age of 40 that, support Bernie Sanders or whoever. There's this red-brown alliance that could potentially be, I feel like they're thinking, we have to, he's thinking 40 years down the line, like China's thinking 200 years down the line. And we're thinking, can we make it to the midterms?
Well, there's a lot of that. And I mean, it's one of the things that's very, I think, important about the recruiting of Donald Trump, that it started more than 40 years ago.
Right.
And it's not that it was one ingenious 40-year plan. It was more a series of events and protocols that played out over and over and evolved into something greater, far, far greater than anyone had originally conceived. I mean, I grew up, I'm old enough to remember the first Manchurian Candidate movie, which was sort of the epitome of a paranoid, conspiratorial paranoia. And yet here we have something like that actually transpired. I never thought would happen in a million years. And yet it's amazing to me, the American people are not up in arms about it. They don't, it seems to be taking it with a yawn or so. And I think one of the most upsetting things in all this, to me, one of the most disturbing things is that if we are to make sure this doesn't happen again, we have to know exactly what happened. There has to be a counterintelligence investigation. And the truth is that really has not happened. James Comey, when he was head of the FBI, was supposed to do that. He was fired by Trump. When Robert Mueller took over as special counselor, he was supposed to do a counterintelligence investigation, but he didn't do it. Or if he did, it got buried, and he just did a criminal investigation. So these are very different kinds of investigation. It's important to understand that counterintelligence investigations are supposed to uncover intelligence threats.
Do you think it's because there's too many people who could be of power that could be exposed? Too many. I mean, remember when Mitt Romney was on stage debating Barack Obama, and Barack Obama said the 1980s called and wants its foreign policy back. Well, the joke's on us. Mitt Romney was 100% correct about the threat of Russia.
Absolutely.
But I mean, I think there's something there. Like, we've been in denial, and maybe, folks who didn't know that they were cozying up to the wrong people. We saw the Eric Swalwell situation with the Chinese spy that was, I mean, how often have we been vulnerable, and how much has been released? Is that why they don't want to go down that? It's being buried?
Well, I think that's absolutely part of it. And I talked to CIA and FBI guys who said, we didn't know what to do after the Soviet Union crumbled. We thought, oh, these are our friends. I talked to businessmen who started doing business with former KGB agents, not thinking for a moment they could possibly become activated again. And also, think about it this way. This is one of the most grotesque intelligence failures in American history since John Wilkes Booth shot Lincoln. And you think the FBI doesn't want to say, oh, this is how we failed. No one wants to call attention to their own failures. And I think that's a big, big part of it. But I think unless we undertake that kind of rigorous self-examination, we're going to be exposed again in the future.
Last question. Are you afraid? I mean, I'm afraid interviewing you.
And what's in my?
I mean, the Putin's not kind on those who challenge him.
Right. I think I'm not personally afraid, but I think it's wise. And I talked to Yuri Shvets, who was with the KGB, and his first partner, Litvinenko, was murdered, assassinated, and Yuri testified and fingered the assassin in the UK inquest into Litvinenko's death. He also worked for Boris Berezovsky, who ended up dead rather mysteriously. I don't want to follow that tradition, I guess, and I know Yuri takes precautions, but thankfully, most of what Russia has done has not taken place on American soil, and I have no plans to travel to Moscow in the near future.
Okay, one more question, completely it's not connected to that, but I think about it often. A lot of these tech companies have major investment from some of these oligarchs, these Russian oligarchs. And of course, and it's not just Russian oligarchs, there's Chinese. We understand that the role of tech is a geopolitical game. And we're having these very serious conversations about privacy and platforming. How much of foreign policy, stick to Putin's foreign policy, is playing out in ways that we're just not even aware, whether it's monitoring our text messages or how platforms distribute information, how the business model of certain companies is pushing some politics over others?
Right. Well, I think this is a huge vulnerability, and I go into it a fair amount in the book, and some of it can be traced to Jeffrey Epstein, and he had all these salons with the great techie. And right now we see the divorce of Bill Gates, and one of the reasons appears to have been that he was going to Epstein's a lot. You have the possibility of Kompromat being done there. I mean, there was also the story, the way I reported in the book, how Epstein got Elon Musk by sort of seducing Elon Musk's brother and providing him with a girlfriend and so forth. So there's an awful lot of that. In addition, several of the Russian women who worked with Jeffrey Epstein, there's a woman named Masha Drakova, who was Epstein's publicist for a while. She is a big, big Putin supporter. There's a movie out about her called Putin's Kiss, and she was the head of Nashi, which is sort of the Russian equivalent of the Hitler Youth Movement, but for Putin. And she is becoming a big force in Silicon Valley. There's something like 17,000 Russian nationals working in Silicon Valley. Who knows how many have allegiance to Russia? You have recently what is it called? There's the dark side hacking of colonial utilities. There's solar winds.
Right.
There's a Tampa hacking of the Tampa, Florida water supply in which the hacker ramped up the amount of lye in the water by a factor of 100. And fortunately, someone was paying attention and was able to stop it before it poisoned everyone. But, you know, we have no idea. Are they in the did they penetrate the electric grids in Texas when you have that ice storm? There are thousands of vulnerabilities. And all we know is that we've not uncovered them yet. And when the Russians can push a button and paralyze us, it is really quite threatening.
It's almost like we should fund our infrastructure so that we have a stronger infrastructure, so that we're not vulnerable. It's almost like there might be foreign interest in keeping us, you know, tethered to austerity politics, the way that many of the Republicans are looking to hold up. Many thoughts.
Absolutely.
Craig Unger, thank you so much for joining us. You can check out Craig's book. It's Penguin Press, I believe. It is called American Kompromat, How the KGB Cultivated Donald Trump, and Related Tales of Sex, Greed, Power, and Treachery. And for those of you who, you know, are curious about this, like you said, this has been, a lot of this stuff was reported on in different ways in the early 80s and late 70s. And it's just piecing it all together and looking back at it in retrospect. And obviously there's new stuff that you've reported on as well. You know, how did we get there, and why is nothing happening? That's what's concerning me. We gotta, never again.
Yes.
Hopefully. All right. Thanks, Craig.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. All right. We'll be right back with Joshua Kahn Russell and Napoleon the Legend to talk about today's news.
Back as currency, greed from the Nomiki show. The Nomiki show. Yeah, Clash momentarily for class solidarity. Cash circulating, give the masses back its currency. Greed
Napoleon,
from
sing along.
Oligarchs stay fed, deep state, fake fed. Everybody break bread. Racism, homophobia, sexism, religion in this melting pot we live in. Time to build a new system, unionize labor rights. Highlight the issue, talking heads left is best. The saga continues. The Nomiki show.
We should have a dance party at some point. Maybe one Friday. What's up, guys? Got Napoleon the Legend here. He is an Afrobeat hip hop artist. You sold out your last one. I'm looking at your Instagram and it's like sold out. So have you re-upped it? Like what's the deal?
No, not right now. We're just pressing with La Cosca Records, which is a French record label. We're pressing limited edition vinyl, and every time we're putting it out, they're selling out fast. We'll see later on if like we're gonna repress it.
Love it.
You got to get that vinyl in the U.S., man.
I know. It's coming. It's
Joshua Kahn Russell, Executive Director of the Wildfire Project, straight out of Oakland. What's up?
Hey, I've been listening to Napoleon's new album a lot. It's called The Hole in My Heart, Part 3. It's the whole of my headphones right now.
My headphones broke yesterday. I didn't work out today because I was like, I can't do this. I gotta listen. We become so. Remember what we used to do with Walkman, and then like the CD players, they'd always skip. Like if you were going for a run, how did we? What?
We've gotten soft, gotten
Kids,
spoiled.
you don't understand. In the old days, they'd have to listen to vinyl as they were on their elliptical. No,
I miss making mixtapes, like actual mixtapes.
They were the best. My dad in his office, it's a new office. He moved my old boombox. I'm like, you still, what are you doing with it? It's the tape boombox, like the 8 CD player. It was such a big deal when I got it. Oh my God, I like begged for that thing. And he's like, oh, I just listen to radio on it still.
That's how, we would, because I grew up in the punk scene, and we would make mixtapes for people we had crushes on. That's how we like, instead of the like, do you like me? Check yes or no kind of thing in middle school. We made mixtapes that.
Yeah, I used to do that. I used to be the guy like that was slinging tapes at school. And all the girls would ask me to make a tape for them.
We should find them and play them and see how. I know I have the old ones that we girls would do it for friends, and are like moms. Like I had a mom's day mixtape, but then I got them from guys, and I was like, it would be like Bone Thugs and Harmony. Like, okay, guys, we're gonna shift gears real quick. Game very serious now because we do have serious things to discuss. All right. So Tom Cotton, genius senator. I'm going to guess he's one of the senators who came out and said that he doesn't wear masks and he has not gotten vaccinated and has no interest in getting vaccinated because 2 Republican senators did say that, but it's anonymous. I think we're all aware that the headquarters for the AP and Al Jazeera were bombed by Israeli forces, by Netanyahu, and gave them an hour to evacuate. How generous to reporters. Great move, Israel. Champion of democracy. So Tom Cotton says the AP, the Associated Press, colluded with Hamas. Now, we're going to play this clip, but I just want to set the frame here for a second because I'm very curious if it's like, oh, I can make 15 arguments at once. Like, oh, the Associated Press, the liberals who they're up to no good and you should never trust the liberal press. And then like doing the bidding for Netanyahu. So let's play the clip.
Why is the Associated Press sharing a building with Hamas? Surely these intrepid reporters knew who their neighbors were.
Are you kidding me?
Did they knowingly allow themselves to be used as human shields by a U.S. designated terrorist organization? Did the AP pull its punches and decline to report for years on Hamas's misdeeds? I submit that the AP has some uncomfortable questions to answer.
Bum, bum, bum. Boom. Joshua.
I mean, he doesn't even bother anymore trying to pretend that this was a legitimate military target, right? It's just moving straight to demonizing the media, saying, well, they deserved it, right? And that is not only perfectly in line with how that strain of authoritarianism in the Republican Party views the media, and the media is focusing on that because it's them, but the logic extends to hospitals and schools and other infrastructure. And I cringe every time, like whenever I hear the trope of human shields, it's so despite all of the sophisticated targeting weaponry that Israel is indiscriminately entering into collective punishment, and to use the excuse of saying that there's human shields, which they use every time, it's like saying, well, you made me kill children. You made me. It's exactly the logic of the abuser. It's a convenient. They can just claim that in any circumstance for any reason with no proof or evidence whatsoever. And also the specter of Hamas. I was actually listening to MR today and was glad that this was pointed out. The majority report, they were pointing out that, Hamas is a coordinating governing body. And so you can call almost anything Hamas, right? It doesn't necessarily correlate to a military target, right? The Israel claimed Hamas is everywhere. Human shields are everywhere. And so therefore, there never needs to be accountability for killing civilians, killing children. It's just
when you have a zone that small, you can't help but have it's not human shields. It's called there's such a small sliver of land and there's nowhere for people to go that it isn't even if they want to go down that path of that stupid argument, not everybody has like a $1 zillion dome that is paid for by US government to protect them, but we'll just worked up. Napoleon.
I mean, Hamas is like a convenient label you could put on anything, and to help them justify any type of attack, any type of deed they do, they'll just say, oh, they had to do something with Hamas. And also, it's funny because Al Jazeera, I believe, was in this building because I have a friend who works for Al Jazeera, and I texted him to make sure they were okay. So it's not just AP Press, it's companies like Al Jazeera, and just to insinuate that somehow they work for the AP Press or Al Jazeera or media, like they signed up to be with Hamas or something like that. Totally
I just
doesn't make any
texted
type
someone
of
I
sense.
know that works for the Associated Press as I'm sitting here. I was like, I didn't know you worked for Hamas when you worked at the Associated Press.
Right. Like
Good
how
to
do
know.
you even insinuate that? It's such a ridiculous stance and a ridiculous idea. And I saw a video on your Instagram story where you see that mostly the people were scrambling with, they had cameras and journalist equipment that they use it. And it's obvious that Israel doesn't want journalists to cover what's going on over there. They don't want any images, any type of footage, any type of reporting coming out of Gaza.
I don't know if that's their I can't think that Netanyahu is that stupid. But this is all revealing to me in terms of power is he's that desperate, and that he is going so aggro because he's so afraid of being taken down that he's willing to pose the most extraordinary attacks on Palestinian people in at least the last decade, and to the point where he's willing to, maybe it was a quick move. I don't know if they knew that the press was there. I can't think he was that stupid that he would bomb the Associated Press headquarters. I can't think that, but the intelligence is obviously the most sophisticated intelligence, some of the most sophisticated intelligence
they
in the
had
world.
to know. How could they not know? Because they
There's like 6 buildings there. I mean, seriously, that's how small the land is. Like, guys, are we kidding?
They're trying to control the images coming out. They're trying to control the reporting.
You really think that they'd be willing to attack the Associated Press and have, he thinks he's that confident in his support, which is true, by the way, that he didn't think that was too far to attack the Associated Press?
I don't think he thinks anything is too far. I don't think I mean, what gets defined too far to an authoritarian, right?
I don't know.
Only the limits that get put on you from some counterweight, which right now there's nothing. And
so doesn't it remind you of trial by combat with that Giuliani was saying, and like the things Trump was doing when he knew he was going to come out of power, like desperate times. It's desperation. So he has no limits. I don't put anything on him, like any type of restraint.
And this is a man who Netanyahu, like many authoritarians, went to school in the West, speaks, beautiful English, understands the nuances of U.S. politics. And this is where I just the international community is up in arms over this. People who have usually stayed silent are up in arms over these attacks. The press, the international, that's something that Biden is going to have to respond to. So let's just real quickly show Biden's response, because Biden did talk to Netanyahu. And he was just like, okay, well, could you just maybe think about a ceasefire? Meanwhile, here's a bunch of money for some missiles to bomb Palestinian schools. But Biden, he's this is my opening today, he's waffling because it's not a good look for him to not criticize Netanyahu for attacking the Associated Press. It's not a good look for the international community to see that Biden, who is funding these efforts with a pen, and Congress is funding these efforts, is not condemning it in a forceful way. I mean, this is the same Netanyahu who buddied up with Jared effing Kushner. Are we kidding? What is going on?
If you scroll down, the second tweet in that tweet thread is them being like, oh, by the way, we also talked to Palestinian authorities. It's a rhetorical afterthought, right? It completely embodies that. The thing about what you're saying with the narrative changing too, the fact that the discourse is fundamentally different than it's been in decades, is, I think it's important to talk about it for a second, because the rejection of the both sides-ism, at least among U.S. progressives, is new, right? Up until now, the liberal byline of I'm progressive on everything except the things that affect me personally has absolutely been true for American Jews. And the understanding of social problems, not as fundamentally about ideology or beliefs, which is what the both sides kind of trope rests on, but instead is about a foundationally simple power dynamic, is really important. And in this society, we're taught that problems and conflict arise from the ideas in people's heads, right? Rather than a material power relationship. And so the fact that so many people are pointing out that one side is a nuclear armed state attacking a starved and repressed population that has handmade rockets and acts with impunity.
But Iran funds them.
Right. There's the pointing out of that, like regardless of how if they do try to paint, Palestinians as materially powerful, the reason why that's important, and just as a quick aside, understanding things in terms of power in the popular consciousness in this country is largely, I think, an outcome of the work of the movement for Black Lives from the last couple of years. And it matters not just for understanding why the world is how it is, but also for understanding how to make change and intervene on a power dynamic, intervene strategically. And so that's what's most encouraging for me, is that now social movements are saying, okay, the narrative is beginning to change. How do we translate that into action?
What do you think, Napoleon?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what he's saying. And I think it's important for people to, we understand it, but for everybody to understand the U.S. complicity in this whole thing. And I don't think the average person might understand. They think it's something that's going on in Israel. And when you see the way the White House is tweeting, and the fact that they're in full support, and if you like in every other nation, like in the UN and everything else, is saying it's a war crime, they should stop and everything else. The only thing that's allowing and enabling Israel to do, the government Israel to act the way it acts, is because it has U.S. unconditional backing and support with the weapons, with everything else. Imagine if tomorrow Biden had some sort of cojones and was like, hey, like, you got to stop doing that. We're going to stop funding you guys. It would make it so much harder for Israel to carry out these type of things. And I think we have to go hard, the way we're going. And it's good to see like the squad and people in Congress speaking out against it. And like I said, I think that is a big change from what we've seen in the years past. And we have to continue it, because as long as the U.S. is going to hold the same type of policy vis-a-vis Israel, the massacre is going to continue.
Not to mention that in the press hearing, you had the press challenging the State Department, explicitly challenging the State Department. You have mainstream media allowing people like John Oliver to make a case and say, you guys are out of your effing minds. The sea change is beyond just having a few members of Congress. Thank God we have Rashida Tlaib, first Palestinian elected into Congress. Thank God we have Ilhan Omar. Thank God we have the squad. Thank God we have the progressives who did not speak out in the past, who now have backup and are willing, like Mark Pocan. Like, there are many elected officials now who are saying, basta, it's enough, right? This is, you can't continue on. And reporters who are like, an attack on, it's too far for them because they've been attacked. So yeah. I feel like there might be an opening here to really go full hard against, I mean, he's already kind of waffling at this moment. And it doesn't, help that Trump was totally in line with the right-wing insanity of Netanyahu. But simultaneously, we as progressives should start calling out our supposed progressive caucus members who went on AIPAC conferences. Mm-hmm. You can't do both. I don't know. Well, do you think that's the line, Joshua?
Well, let's add to the list that y'all are making some of the grassroots actions that are starting to happen all around the country. This last weekend, all around the world on Saturday, there were demonstrations in pretty much every major city. And where I live in the Bay Area, 10,000 people came out. That's unheard of for this kind of moment, right? And last week when I was on the show, I mentioned that there was a call for young Jews to join a strategy call for If Not Now. Over 1,000 people joined a strategy conference call who were brand new, right? This is a doorway for folks who are coming in. They did another set of actions 36 hours later that they're now getting organized to do Shabbat actions this Friday, pressuring Biden around giving money to Israel, especially in the wake of the 78 million that was just given, right? And so when we talk about protest actions or nonviolent direct action, there is, there's kind of two basic kinds. We talk about, there's the demonstration kinds, which are communicative, right? Trying to change a conversation. And then there's concrete actions that go for the material impact. And that's what the logic of the boycott, divest, and sanctions movement is, right? And so what we've seen already this week, all around the world, there are trade unions that are blocking the deployment of weapons to Israel from ports. On the 17th, the Palestine General Federation of Trade Unions in the Gaza Strip issued a call to U.S. labor unions asking them to boycott the Israeli occupation. And where I live in the Bay, there's been a campaign called Block the Boat which is launched by a grassroots organization, the Arab Resource Organizing Center, working with labor, the ILWU Local 10, that in the major attacks on Gaza in 2014, they blockaded ships coming to port, particularly one called Zim, which was successful, impacting on a scale of multiple millions of dollars. And now that ship is scheduled to come back. So people are now gearing up to blockade the port again. And so these are examples of material impact where for so long this issue, people have just thrown up their hands and said, well, that's really unfortunate, but that's happening over there. Like people don't see themselves in it, you know, and that's
we're paying for.
Yeah, and so there's actual avenues to take action.
Can I just, before we wrap, I want to play this video of just to show kind of the. I've received some. I'm sure we all have received some messages from people that are good Democrats. You know, supportive of the movement for Black Lives, showed up in solidarity with George Floyd, and yet the messages have been quite alarming about my, and many others, by the way, reaction to these events in terms of their support of Israel and the brainwashing. I mean, there's no other way of saying it. I think there's, you know, I grew up in an environment hearing the Jewish narrative, the AIPAC Zionist narrative, not the Jewish narrative, let me be very clear. It took effort. Not that I ever sided with it, but it took effort for me personally to investigate and understand what was happening with Palestinians. And I think there's that moment where you have to, you know, let's just play the clip and you'll get a sense.
I think Israelis have to take over and they have to kick them away. It will be much better. Not to kill them, just to go back to Arab countries.
But it's really rightfully ours if you look at the history and at like the wars, and we didn't even start a lot of the wars, and we conquered these places rightfully, like it's ours.
1,400 years later, we come back. Now, I'm not saying that we can blame the people living here for what happened, but you gotta accept that that's some kind of divine justice, that their great-great-great-great-grandfathers kicked my great-great-great-grandfather out of here, and then we come back, and all of a sudden they're like, well, no, we don't want it, it's not fair.
I think that the Jews came here, they took this land, and this is our land now, and I don't think there should be here no Arabs. Like Arabs, they want, we gave them Gaza, they should go live there quietly. If they want, they should go back to Iraq, I don't know, to wherever they want.
I think that we need to... איך אומרים לאיש לערבית? כן, תגידי לי איזה מילה הזאת.
I don't think there's any answer to it. Really? There's only one way, like, I would carpet bomb them.
Oh, you would carpet bomb them?
It's the only way you could deal with it. Like, or try to stop them a different way. It never worked.
I think that we're miserable. The Arabs make a פיגועים and we need to kill Arabs. No.
I think another thing that the Jews should have rights to hate them. I think we have the right to hate them. I don't see a reason why not. Okay. I wouldn't trust any of them.
So clearly, I mean, this is a woman on the street kind of thing, and when you do women, there are plenty of people, I'm sure, that don't necessarily agree with what they're saying, but there's definitely a brainwashing that's happening. I'll start with Napoleon. What do you think?
Well, we know that the Jewish community is not a monolith, and it's certainly not everybody's perception, and a lot of them are diametrically opposed to what we just heard. What's alarming is that the actions we're seeing from the Israeli government is in line with folks who believe this, which I'm almost positive that they're the small minority. And I just don't know how that happens. And it's funny because let's take their line of reasoning. I wish they were going this hard for the Native Americans. And when they're talking about land being stolen years back and this and that, we are in modern times. You cannot bring a holy book as a discussion and say this is a real estate contract. It doesn't work like that. You know what I'm saying? It's just nobody's gonna buy that. And it's just the fact that that's the policy that's being enabled over there, backed by us in the United States and funded by us. It's totally ridiculous. I don't know how long this could last.
What was interesting is you had everything from carpet bomb them to murder everybody, kill them all, to just displace them. Tell them to go to Iraq or something.
I mean, it shows it all on the same spectrum.
Can people leave Gaza if they wanted to?
Great question. Oh, isn't that an interesting question? And what route would they take, buddy? Not
because
you.
I know they can't take. I heard they can't take the sea, and the other side is gated. Where are they gonna go? Like, even if that was like the option, like you're African, you go back to Africa type thing. Like it's an easy thing. It's the same statement.
That's right.
When that woman laughed, as she said, kill the Arabs, it was just
scary.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first time I was around this flavor, this like particular type of Zionism. Like I grew up as one of the only Jews in my town. And then I went to a historically Jewish university where there was like the full spectrum of political opinion on display. And I had such disgust and shock. I hadn't encountered that before. And I had like an identity crisis. I was like, y'all are not my people. What is this? And then I learned instead to see this through the lens of trauma. And it clicked for me, which is, people often repeat a cliche of like a cycle of violence and in a pretty simplistic way, but it's more important to understand the relationship here between political ideology and generational trauma, not as a justification for people's behavior at all, as a way to understand that ethnic nationalism often postures as liberation, but it's a road to tyranny, right? So Israel is a nation state founded by Holocaust survivors on the logic of colonization. Of course, this is the outcome, right? And so when Jews were historically repressed and oppressed around the world and adopted a mindset of that victimhood, then when you're given that level of state power and military supremacy and maintain that mindset of victimhood, you reproduce the trauma that created it, right? And that's why authoritarian leaders need to build a sense of aggrievement and victimhood no matter where they operate. And it can take a deeper root if the population that they are demagoguing are people who are in a cycle of generational trauma. That's how that works. And, and it happens on a global level. Like my friend, I have a Palestinian Israeli friend, Wallace Sabates, who was just arrested in Haifa and was talking about it. And he pointed out how Europe, especially Germany's support for Israel right now, is the result of their shame of the Holocaust, meaning that Palestinian people right now are paying the price for Europe's anti-Semitism. And so the interrelationship between those things is what gives birth, and that's why I think the antidote to ethnic nationalisms as a road to try to convince people that they're going to be safe. The antidote to that is genuine solidarity, and it's just so upsetting to see.
Well, I feel like it's greed also at the top, and imperialistic tendencies that's instrumentalizing that sentiment, that pain and that trauma. It's like we could zero, just like Trump was doing with people that were left behind from the American dream, and was like, look, it's these people that is their fault. I think it feels like it's the same game that's being played at the top.
Yeah, can I just put a point on what you're saying? Because that's what we were talking about earlier with the material power relationship, is that all of the ideological stuff I mentioned, that's not what's driving it. That's what's being exploited by the drive to acquire land and resources and to dispossess people in the process of doing it. And so I'm not saying that generational trauma is the root and source of this. I'm saying that is the fertile ground upon which demagogues can play in order to maintain material power and control of land and resources.
Could not agree more. Very profound. Thank you, guys. Thank you for this hearty conversation. I'm sure we'll have more of this in the next couple. It's not going away anytime soon, unfortunately, unless Biden decides to say, "Give me my money back," our money back, I should say. Joshua Kahn Russell, what are you working on? What can people see here?
Well, the Wildfire Project, which is our organization that helps train progressive organizations, we're actually just about to launch a new strategy process. And so we'll be sharing that out soon. And if you're curious, you can go to our website and join our listserv. And we're really excited to be sharing that. But check out wildfireproject.org.
It's up there.
Yeah.
Napoleon, can't get my vinyl.
They're sold out, but I'll try to work
Can I
that
save
out.
one next time? Can we just like put one on hold for me? Okay.
Yeah, I'll put one on the side.
On the wait list.
I have actually The Hole in My Heart, the part 3 coming out on May 28th. And this Friday, I have a video that I'm featured on with a French rapper, Kenneth's on, but it's in French. But I'm very proud because he's one of my rap heroes. So be on the lookout for that this Friday.
So cool.
Love it. We shot it on Napoleon Beach in the south of France.
Oh,
it
damn.
It wasn't even, it was by accident. Yeah,
I hope you did a photo shoot there too.
Oh, we did.
Napoleon, one of the many things I'm grateful to you for is introducing me to French rap. I'd never heard French rap before, like just never heard rhyming in the French language like that before. And you got me hooked.
No, it's beautiful. There's some gems in French rap. I mean that.
I love it. When I lived in France in 2003, I once stumbled upon a French rap video being shot. And that's where I was introduced to French rap, was being a 19-year-old going to nightclubs. Sorry, mom and dad. That's what I did with my summer exchange, was I went to nightclubs and listened to French rap. Like Buddha Bar. I don't know if you guys remember any of this stuff, if you've been there, but that was hot in 2003.
That's what's up. Where in France were you?
Paris.
Oh, okay. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah. So anyways, I studied French. I did not study Spanish. If you watched my live last night, you would know that. And we had a whole conversation about how my Spanish is almost there. It's almost there, but like, because I didn't get the fundamentals, and I did with French, there you go. Thanks, guys. Love you. See you next week, next Tuesday. Mwah.
It was good to see you both.
Bisous. À tout à l'heure.
Guys, à plus tard.
All right, we've got some shout outs here. New Rocket Shirt says, I celebrate the anniversary of the various punk and hardcore mixed. Oh, they should have seen that. Mixtape an old boyfriend gave me on, ready for this? November 25th, 1982, but every year. Oh, that must have been a long-term boyfriend. Kyler Rosado. Saw it on Instagram last night, but this hair, thank you. It's blonder. I don't know how much of it you can see. It was curlier yesterday because they did it for me, and I don't have a curling iron or the patience to do that. So yes, it's a little blonder. Carrie Venus, thank you for the love. And OG, Greek goddess. Really cool. Nomi, shout out. Wayne Barrett, RIP. Yes, Wayne Barrett died the night before Donald Trump was inaugurated. One of my great heroes. So thank you to everybody. Thank you to our moderators who have been ruthlessly in those chats, just killing those trolls, kill the trolls, and boosting the algorithms. Everybody who's in there, these algorithms are killing us, killing everybody, I should say. So thank you to everyone. Make sure to share and like. And if you haven't checked out the committee show, the committee program is up right now. Go check it out on at 3. It goes every Monday at 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. But you can watch it. And I think you can watch some clips as well. So go check that out. All right, guys, we will see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. same time, 3 p.m. Eastern, same time, same place, here on YouTube and on Twitch. Stay in solidarity.
The Nomiki Show. Clash momentarily for class solidarity. Cash circulating, give the masses back its currency. Greed from elites, oligarchs stay fed. Deep state, fake fed, everybody break bread. Racism, homophobia, sexism, religion in this melting pot we live in. Time to build a new system, unionize labor rights. Highlight the issue, talking heads left is best. The saga continues. The Nomiki Show. The Nomiki Show. The Nomiki Show. The Nomiki Show.